I almost told her she was wasting her life. That was my first instinct. End it quickly. Give her something clean, something she could walk away with. But I've learned something about clean answers. They're usually lies. Or worse, they're answers people use to avoid the truth. So I didn't answer her. Not yet. I just looked at her. Really looked. And what I saw wasn't a woman who was lost. It was someone who had seen something and didn't know how to live with it. There's a difference, a big one. Most people never see anything real. They just move from one structure to another. School, work, routine, distraction. They stay busy enough to never ask the question. She had asked it. That was the problem. She was standing in the middle of the room like the ground had shifted under her. And she didn't trust it anymore. Not the floor, not herself, not the thing she had built over 20 years. That's not confusion. That's collapse. The quiet kind. The kind that doesn't make noise, but changes everything. I told her to sit down. She didn't want to. You can always tell. People think if they stay standing, they're still in control. Sitting means something is happening, something real, something they might not be able to manage. She sat anyway, slow, careful, like the chair might give way under her. I asked her again what happened, and this time she told me the truth, not the article, not the journalist, not the words on the page. That wasn't it. That was just the trigger. The real thing came before that. Always does. There was a student. There's always a student. Someone who arrives at the right moment, or the wrong one. Same thing, depending on how you look at it. 19 years old, hungry, focused. The kind of talent that makes a teacher believe again, not in the student, in themselves. That's the part nobody admits. We don't just teach to build others. We teach to confirm something about ourselves, that we still matter, that we still have something real to give. She gave everything to that student. Time, attention, precision, the kind of attention that costs something, the kind you can't fake. 8 months, 8 months of building something, not just skill, trust, rhythm, understanding, and then one day she was gone. No goodbye, no explanation, just gone. To a bigger school, a louder name, something more visible, more impressive. That's the word she used, impressive. I didn't say anything for a moment, because this is where people usually lie. They say it's not a big deal. They say it happens. They say you should move on, all useless, all noise. I looked at her and said something else, something she wasn't expecting. I said, "That's not why it hurt." She looked at me like I had missed the point. I hadn't. I said, "It hurt because for 8 months you believed you were necessary, and in one moment you weren't." Silence, heavy, the kind that settles into the bones. She didn't argue, didn't defend. That's how I knew I was right. People only argue when you're close. She just sat there, holding it, feeling it. That word, replaceable, that's the real injury. Not loss, not rejection. Replaceable. It's a quiet fear. Most people never say it out loud, but it sits under everything. Under ambition, under discipline, under the need to be better, faster, stronger. All of it is just a way of asking, if I disappear, does anything disappear with me? Or was I just filling space? She was waiting for me to fix it. You could see it, that small hope people carry, that someone older, someone who has figured it out, will give them a sentence that puts everything back in place. I don't do that anymore. I used to. I was very good at it. People loved it. Quotes, clean ideas, things they could repeat, things that sounded like truth, but didn't require anything from them. This was different. This was going to cost her something. So I asked her a question instead, a simple one. What exactly did you lose? She opened her mouth. Closed it. That's where it starts. Not knowing, not having the answer ready, that's the first honest moment. Everything before that is performance. She stayed quiet. Too quiet. Not the kind of silence where someone is thinking, the kind where something is breaking slowly, internally. I let it happen. Most people rush to fill that space. They think silence is empty. It isn't. Silence is where the truth reorganizes itself. If you interrupt it, you interrupt the process. After a while, she said it, not clearly, not confidently, but honestly. I lost the feeling that it mattered. There it is. Not the student, not the article, not the reputation, the meaning. That's what collapsed. Everything else is just decoration around that. I leaned back. Let that sit between us. Because once someone says that out loud, you can't go back to pretending. You either rebuild something real, or you start performing. And performance is a slow death. I've seen it too many times. People don't break all at once. They adjust. They refine the mask. They become more efficient versions of something hollow, and the world rewards them for it. That's the worst part. You can succeed and be completely disconnected from yourself. She looked at me, waiting, still hoping I would give her something solid to stand on. So I gave her something else, something unstable. I said, "Good." She blinked, didn't understand. Of course she didn't. Nobody ever does at that moment. I said it again. Good. Because now you know. Know what? She asked. That what you built wasn't enough to hold you. That's not failure. That's information. Painful information. But clean. And clean is rare. Most people spend years living inside structures that are already broken. They just refuse to look at the cracks. You saw the crack. Now you have a choice. Ignore it or go deeper. She shook her head slightly. Not disagreement. Resistance. The kind that comes when someone realizes the solution is harder than the problem. I don't want to lose everything I built. Of course you don't. Nobody does. We attach ourselves to the structure, the identity, the role, teacher, leader, expert. It feels like losing, that is, losing yourself. But that's the illusion. If you can lose it, it was never you. That landed hard. I could see it, the way her posture shifted, not physically, internally, something pulling back, something protecting. That's when people either shut down or open. There's no middle. So I pushed, gently but directly. I said, "You're not afraid of wasting your life. You're afraid that without all of this, there's nothing underneath. No school, no title, no students, just you, and you don't trust that version." Silence again, different this time, sharper, more exposed. She looked away. That's normal. When the truth gets too close, people look anywhere else. The wall, the floor, their hands, anywhere but the place it's pointing. I didn't let her escape it, not out of cruelty, out of respect. I said, "Look at me." She did. Reluctantly, I said, "I know that fear. Intimately. I built entire systems to avoid it. Speed, discipline, relentless forward motion, always becoming something, never just being. Because being means you have to face what's already there. And I didn't trust it either. Not for a long time, not even when the world was telling me I should. Fame doesn't fix that. Success doesn't fix that. If anything, it hides it better. She whispered, "So, what did you do?" That question, it sounds simple. It isn't, because people expect a turning point, a moment, a decision. Life doesn't work like that. It's slower, more uncomfortable, less cinematic. I told her the truth. I didn't fix it. She frowned. I continued. I saw it. That's the beginning, not fixing, seeing clearly, without adjusting it, without softening it, without turning it into something inspirational, just seeing it. That you don't trust yourself without the structure, that you don't know who you are without the role, that your sense of worth is tied to something external. That's not something you solve in a day or a year. Sometimes not even in a lifetime, but once you see it, you can't unsee it. And that changes how you move. She was listening now, not waiting for an answer, actually listening. That's rare. Very rare. So I went further. I said, "You have been teaching for 20 years. She nodded. I said, "And in all that time, how many times did you teach someone to question the path itself? Not improve on it, not refine it, question it?" She didn't answer, didn't need to. The silence answered for her. I said, "You built something strong, but you built it on continuation, not examination. That's why one article could shake it, because it hit something that was never fully tested, not deeply, not honestly." She took a breath, slow, heavy, like she was adjusting to a new weight. I don't know how to rebuild that. Good. You're not supposed to, not yet. Rebuilding too fast just recreates the same structure with different words, different branding, same weakness. No. First, you sit in it. The uncertainty, the lack of clarity, the uncomfortable space where you don't know who you are in relation to what you built. That's where something real starts. If you can stay there, most people can't. They escape. New project, new identity, new direction, anything to avoid the gap. But the gap is the work. She didn't speak for a while, and this time it wasn't resistance, it was something else. Something quieter, more precise, like she was no longer trying to escape the question, but actually standing inside it. That's rare. Most people visit that space. They don't stay. She stayed, and when she finally spoke, her voice had changed. Not stronger, not more confident, just more real. So if I don't rebuild yet, what do I do? Good question. Wrong expectation. Because the answer isn't something you do, not at first. I told her, you pay attention. To what? Everything you've been avoiding. That feeling when you walk into the place you used to feel certain, and now you don't. That hesitation before you speak, when you're not sure if you still believe what you're saying. That subtle disconnect between what people think you are and what you actually feel. That's the signal, not the problem. The signal, she nodded slowly. You could see it landing, not as relief, but as recognition. I continued, for 20 years. You've been operating from clarity, or what felt like clarity. Now you're operating from awareness, and those are not the same thing. Clarity is comfortable. It gives direction, certainty, momentum. Awareness is different. It slows you down, forces you to see contradictions, gaps, things that don't align anymore. Most people interpret that as failure. It's not. It's an upgrade, a painful one, but real. She exhaled. Long, like she had been holding her breath for years without realizing it. And what if I don't like what I see? You won't. Not at first. Nobody does. Because what you're seeing is everything you built to avoid seeing yourself clearly. That's why it's uncomfortable. That's why it feels like loss. But it's not loss. It's exposure. And exposure is the beginning of something precise. Something that actually fits. I leaned forward slightly, not to pressure her, to anchor the moment. I said, right now, you're between two versions of yourself. The one that worked, and the one that's not defined yet. That space in between, that's where most people panic, because there's no identity there, no validation, no structure, just openness, uncertainty, and a lot of noise from the outside telling you to decide quickly, pick something, be something, stabilize, But if you move too fast, you'll choose familiarity over truth. Every time, she was still, completely still, not frozen, focused. There's a difference, so I went deeper. I said, "You don't need to become someone new. You need to remove what isn't true anymore." That's a very different process. Becoming is additive. Removing is surgical, precise, uncomfortable, because you don't always know what stays, only what doesn't. She swallowed. That one hit, harder than the others. I don't know what's real anymore. Good. That means you're finally asking the right question. Not, what should I do? Not, how do I fix this? But, what is actually true for me now? Not 5 years ago. Not what worked before. Now. That question, if you stay with it, will reorganize everything. Slowly, not in a way you can control, but in a way that's aligned, and alignment feels very different from success. Success can be loud, visible, recognized. Alignment is quieter, but stable. It doesn't shake every time something external changes. That's what you're missing. Not motivation, not discipline, stability. Internal stability. She looked at me differently now. Not like someone asking for help, like someone measuring something internally, testing. That's when I knew the shift had started. Not complete, but real. So I gave her one last thing, not an answer, a constraint. I said, for the next 30 days, don't make any major decisions, no new direction, no drastic changes, no dramatic exits. Just observe. Teach if you teach, work if you work. But watch yourself while you do it. Notice where it feels forced. Notice where it still feels real. Notice where you're performing and where you're actually present. Write it down if you have to. But don't act on it yet. Let the pattern emerge. Clarity built on observation is stronger than clarity built on emotion. And right now, you're emotional. Of course you are. Something collapsed. But emotion is not a stable foundation for rebuilding. She nodded, not enthusiastically, not relieved, but committed. That's better. Much better. Because commitment doesn't need to feel good. It just needs to be real. She stood up slowly, different from before, less fragile, not strong yet, but grounded. There's a difference. She didn't thank me. I didn't expect her to. Gratitude comes later, when things start making sense again, if they do. She walked to the door, paused, and then she asked something most people never ask. Does it ever go back to how it was? I almost smiled, not because it was a naive question, because it was an honest one. I said, no, and that's the point. The door closed behind her, soft, almost nothing, and yet that was the moment. Not when she spoke, Not when she understood, not when things started to make sense. That, right there, because that's how it always happens. Not with noise, not with some dramatic realization, but with a quiet decision to stop lying to yourself. Most people never reach that point. They get close, very close. They feel the crack. They sense something is off, but then they step back. They smooth it over. They tell themselves a better story, something easier to live with. I'm just tired. I need a break. It's just a phase. No, it's not. It's you seeing something real and deciding whether you're strong enough to face it. That's the line. And almost nobody crosses it. Because crossing it has a cost. A real one. You lose certainty. You lose identity. You lose the version of yourself that made sense to other people. And here's the part no one wants to admit. Sometimes you lose your place in the world, at least the one you knew. That's why people stay. Not because they're weak, because they understand the price. But here's the truth. And it's not comfortable. If you ignore it, if you go back, if you rebuild the same life just to feel safe again, you don't actually recover. You just become more efficient at pretending. Stronger mask, cleaner story, better performance, but underneath, nothing changes. And that's the real trap. Not failure, not loss, but spending years, decades, living something that isn't actually yours anymore. Waking up every day, executing a version of yourself that you already outgrew. That's not stability. That's slow erosion, silent, invisible, until one day you don't recognize anything, not your work, not your choices, not even yourself. And by then, it's not a crisis. It's a life, fully built, fully structured, completely disconnected. That's what she saw. Not just the student leaving, not the article, not the doubt. She saw the possibility that everything she built could become that. And once you see that, you don't get to go back. You can try. People do it all the time. They go back. They reattach. They convince themselves it still works. But something is always off. Always. Because a part of you knows, and it doesn't go silent again. That's the cost of awareness. You don't get comfort anymore. You get truth. And truth doesn't care if you're ready. So the real question was never. Am I wasting my life? That's too easy. Too clean. The real question is, now that you see it, are you still willing to live it? Or are you ready to let it collapse? Because you don't get both. You don't get truth and comfort. You choose. Everyone does. Most people just don't realize it.